Lord, give us the light to know your will, and then give us the strength to get it done. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, we come to the final conference of the retreat. And so we've been developing the idea of integrity. And so first we began with looking at integrity and duplicity. Then we looked at how do you define yourself. If you're going to be a person of integrity, which is a person that lives according to a moral or ethical code or a set of values, then you have to know what those values are and who you are. Either one, if you're living with integrity, should point to the other, right? So if you're living a moral life, then we should know about you. If we know about you, then we should be able to guess what your morality and what you live. Maybe you found that was perfectly right. Maybe you found, like most of us, that there are certain things you need to make adjustments to. Then we went through what has been called the two mountains, or the two halves of life, with the understanding that going through that process, which we all have to go through many times maybe, or at least certainly, helps you reorient yourself, again, for that integrity, for that ethical code. Well, now, finally, and what could have seemed like I could have done at the very beginning of the retreat, but I deliberately left it to the last conference, is to look at a virtue-based spiritual life. Is this working? Okay. And so we're going to look now at the virtues. And why? Because if you have any sort of moral code, it should be defined. Clarity almost always is one of the signs most of God. Right? And it's right from the Old Testament, right? Moses encounters God, and the bush is burning, but without being consumed. So there's light, but no destruction. Right? Other times when Moses comes back from speaking to God in the tent, in the Holy of Holies, his face radiates light. Light is one of the classic symbols of God and God's presence. Or you have the tower of cloud, a pillar of cloud or flame, and it lights the way for the people of Israel. In the New Testament, when our Lord kind of appears and when he speaks, he reveals himself on Mount Tabor, that they're up there, and he begins to glow, and they can barely look at him. Right? And of course, in the book of Revelation, a number of places, but most famously, there will be no need for lamps or the sun, for the Lord God himself will be their light. Right? So clarity is always kind of a pretty good hallmark of things of God. So what? So what are the virtues that we should look for? And so before that, let's look at why virtue. Why? Because most people make the grave mistake, and don't feel bad, I do it all the time, of trying to make our spiritual life consist in what we don't do. People often say, the problem with religion is you can't. Well, the deeper problem with that is that actually doesn't work. Not only is that wrong, it's not about what you can't do. It doesn't work anyway. Remember what I said first conference, things should be practical, applicable to your life. Why? Because if God is real, God is true. And if God is real and God is true, then by definition, things that are untrue or illusions or don't apply probably aren't from God. So, one of the things that you can look at is looking at what you should not do doesn't work. And not only does it not work in your spiritual life, it's never worked in any aspect of any part of your life before, ever. If I asked you to teach me how to cook, and you said, okay, I'm going to teach you how to cook sweet beans. It's a dish from the Dominican Republic, often used for Lent. I'm quite a specialist, to be honest with you. I've taught many people how to make it. I'm really amazing at it. Anyway, so if you were going to teach me, not that I would ever need to learn how to make sweet beans. I was born making it. So you don't tell me don't use. You're not teaching me anything. Teach me the ingredient. Don't use that ingredient. So what is that helpful for? I won't do that. That's not helpful to me. You got to teach me what to do. You can give me what don't do after, some correctives after. When you learn, look, negative formation has its place. Negative formation is when you're taught what not to do. Some of you may have been around people where the only thing you can use them for is negative formation, right? You can't really learn anything from them. Yeah, people are like, I don't like that priest. I'm like, well, negative formation is a thing. So maybe you could use him as the second box. Remember those two boxes? was goofus and gallant, and so he could be the goofus. He could be the kid that's not going to teach you what to do, right? So you can learn, but negative formation only works if there's been positive formation. It always goes second. The problem is many of us approach God the wrong way. We approach God from the negative formation and then go, well, why can't I do it? Well, think about it. You're focusing on things. And what you're focusing on then will become, you'll bring it toward, you'll move, your will will move toward it, right? Basic principle of spiritual life and a philosophy. The intellect leads the will in almost all things. The intellect leads the will. So the intellect, what you think about, what you focus on, your will is moved toward it. It's inclined toward it. That's why you ever notice the most unfortunate but real example probably is when you notice you kind of like someone that they're actually not that good of a person, or you didn't know them that well, but you kind of feel like you like them. We do that with celebrities. We think we know them and we like them, and then you meet them and they're really a jerk. The reason, why do I like them? Because they've been around you so much. The intellect has been presented with it, so the will naturally inclined toward it. Or the other unfortunate example is what they call on the internet, the proximity infatuation. I think I really like this person. I think I love this person. And then you realize, nope, I was just working with them a lot. I was just around them a lot. Intellect, what is presented to the intellect eventually draws the will. So you see how that could be dangerous if you're looking at what you're not supposed to do? Because then it'll draw you in the wrong direction. You want to look at where you should go. Again, I'm not saying we should ignore what we shouldn't do. Of course not. But you actually will grow much further and go much further and grow much more. So the 10 Commandments are a great kind of interesting example, because how many of the commandments are negative restrictions? 8 of them. So they're mostly what you're not supposed to do. 2 of them are positive, right? Go to Mass on Sunday, honor your parents. All the other ones are don't. Don't have other gods, don't do other things, don't do anything. Why would God start and base the law on the 10 Commandments? Well, actually, because he met the people and been working with them for quite some time before that. That's why. See, he doesn't start with the 10 Commandments either. He started with Abraham, way back. All of those people have already been following. Now, obviously, the Exodus is what confirms and strengthens the identity of the people of Israel. There's that beauty through tragedy, by the way. Through the tragedy of the slavery that they went through in Egypt, they're strengthened. But that's after he's already gotten to know them, literally since before anybody alive was born, right? From Abraham way back, all the way through. You with me so far? But a lot of us start with the 10 Commandments. Now, listen, 10 Commandments are amazing. You should memorize them. If only for the fact that you can eventually meet God and be like, well, I know your commandments. Listen, extra credit is extra credit. And you have no idea how that test is going to be graded. I don't either. So you every little piece you can get. And also, I once saw a Mother Teresa movie. So you can put that on the scale. Thank you. You never know. You got to pay a little bit more. Just throw it on there. No, but it's also a good help to learn to examine your conscience. How do you know what you were supposed to do when you go to confession if you don't even know the commandments that you've broken? No, reading the Bible is not one of them. People always say that. I don't know why. Reading the Bible, I don't read the Bible. Is that a commandment? No. You should, though. And I like your head, where your head's at. But nope, not a commandment. So the 10 Commandments, but they are negative restrictions. So it's very hard for you to know what to do. 10 Commandments can keep you from being a monster. That's why they're important. But they don't teach you how to be a good Christian. They will teach you how to not be a monster. But that's the equivalent of saying, you want to date my daughter, and I go, okay, don't hit her. Okay, I wasn't planning to, sir. Cool. So you're asking for a hand in marriage? Because that sounds good then. Like, no, you got to, I guess there's some positive things you should do, right? You gave someone to take care of your children. And you don't just say, like, don't let them go outside in the cold without a coat because they'll die. Yeah, but how about he eats this, he doesn't eat this, he wants this, but you got to be careful because he's slick and he'll try to get more out of you. He goes to bed at this time. Do you see what I mean? It's a simple thing. We do that all the time, and yet for our own growth, we don't always think about it. So negative restrictions are fine to stop being a monster, but they don't tell you what to do, just what to avoid. So now we get to virtues. What's a virtue? Let's be very, very clear about our terms. A virtue is what we can aim for. A virtue is a good action which develops into a habit. A good action, repeated, develops into a habit. The theological terms are a little bit more fancy than that, but even St. Thomas Aquinas basically defines it as that. He just uses a nicer language. The habits will eventually help the soul act correctly. So, good actions that become habits which help the soul act correctly. You with me so far? So you see how there are many virtues. There's no way I could list them all. It's impossible. Because there's so many good habits that help you. And I don't have no intention of doing that. I'm only going to list half a dozen, let's say, give or take, that we're going to look at, only because you have to make your own moral ethical code so that you can then be a man or a woman of integrity. I'm just going to propose some that I think would be worth your time to look at. Virtues you can aim for. The reason you can aim for a virtue is because it's a positive thing to do. Even the ones where they're to restrict something or to control something, it's about the control of it, not the don't do the thing. Do you get what I'm trying to say? You'll see what I mean as we move forward. Now, if a virtue is a good habit, a good action that's developed into a habit, then how do you grow a virtue? Through action. Repeat the action. Heads up. So when God is helping you, you may not notice it because he's giving you a chance to repeat an action. So for example, when he's going to try to help you be more patient, he's not going to just inject you with patience. What he's going to do is send a whole bunch of special people in your life that really get to you. And you're going to now see them not as a problem because you're going to go, I'm so grateful for these people. But I said you're going to see them. I said you're going to see them and say, I'm grateful for these people because they're going to make me much, much better. There are saints and saint makers in the spiritual life. St. Francis de Sales said that. Saints and saint makers. Now you realize these are all saint makers in your life. You can go and embrace them and say, thank you, saint maker. You are making me a better person. It's an action. It's not about a feel-good. And let me be very clear here. Your feelings have very little to do with this. You can feel really good about yourself and be a monster. That's actually incredibly common. You can feel very bad about yourself and be a good person. You could. In fact, you probably will. Just because the closer you move to God, you'll be a little more careful about what you want to perfect. All right? But it's about your actions. What are you doing? Here, commercial break. This has nothing to do with the retreat, but I have to throw it out here. Okay, do you know where I see a lot of people fail in this one? It's shockingly common. And I look and if I can, I try to like tap someone and go, shut up, shut up. Shh, you're winning. Just let it happen. A and B, it often happens in couples or in family or in friends. Somebody wants someone to do something and they don't want to do it, right? So whatever, girl wants boy to do something, boy doesn't want to do it. Or the other way around. I don't care. But finally, B agrees. Now they agree like a jerk. Fine, I guess we'll always do. And I think to myself, so you're a tool. Oh, fine. But every situation can be made better or made worse. Every situation can be made better or made worse. It's not great, but they are agreeing. And if I can get to, I usually like jump, but I don't make it always. No, because what does A do? You know what A does because you've done it. Well, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to be that. And then I just, what are they doing? They're poking gentle. Hating it, but they built it to agree with you. And you just go, and kick it. And what happens? The person who agreed, what do? They go, well, then forget it. I won't. And now I think, so a bad situation just became worse. Because you had the win. Take the W. Shut up. No, but shut up. They don't want it. I'm sorry. You can't control. You're controlling their actions. You want to control their soul. Let me go check with God. See how that works. Oh, wait. No one controls anybody else's soul. They're giving you the win. Take the win. Why? But they don't want to do it. I know. And isn't that much more noble? They don't want to, and they're giving their will. If you just pause for a second, you think, hey, whoa, that's actually like a way bigger sacrifice. If they do it because they want to, that's no sacrifice. That's not a sacrifice. You ask me to eat pizza. You're like, Father, you're so good at eating pizza with me. I know. I've sacrificed. Oh, and we have steak for dessert? Okay, fine. No, that's not a loss. But if you go, oh, let's go eat organic, whatever, half-calf soy latte, free food, soy-based, whatever, I'm going to go, no, what are you doing? Healthy food? What are you doing? What have I done to you? I'm sorry. That's a sacrifice. Now, should the person agree like a classy person? Of course they should. Of course they're being a tool bag by agreeing the wrong way. I get it, 100%. They're absolutely wrong. And if I get a chance, I'll be like, hey, dum-dum, say yes the right way. But you get the win, so you could either make it better. And you want to go A, you want to go holiness level, take the win. Take the win. Be cool. And later, calmly say, hey, thank you for doing that. I know you didn't want to. That, you just climbed up a bunch of your mountains. Because the person will appreciate that you appreciate what they did. You can take a situation, make it better or make it worse. I get it. They shouldn't have agreed that way. And if you're the other side of this party, don't be a tool bag. Just say yes or say no. Let your yes mean yes or your no mean no. It ain't that complicated. It's really hard. My will. Oh no, poor baby. You can't do what you want. What are you, 2? I get it. We all can't do what we want. Trust me, my whole life. I wear the ring around my neck, not on my finger. Okay, so my whole life. But take the win if you get the win. And if you're taking the loss, be a gentleman or a lady about lose. And then later, just gently, without sarcasm, without cruelty, without menace, without mockery, genuinely say, by the way, thank you for doing that. I know you don't want to. Now you've won, and you've won graciously. Soul or their emotions. And you shouldn't want to anyway, but even if you wanted to, you can't. God himself doesn't control our emotions or soul. He lets us have them. Everybody with me so far? That was a completely free gift from me to you because it has nothing to do with the retreat, sort of tangentially because of the idea of emotions. But I just see people step on landmines and I go, okay. You had the win too. That's the worst because I'm like, you lose when you had won. That's so much worse. Because at least if you're losing anyway, you just go do something stupider. Who cares? You lost. But you won and you lost. No. But they don't want to. I know. And isn't that so much more noble that they're willing to give you what they don't want to do? Well, I want them to want it. I understand. I bet Jesus wants you to want to be a good person right now too. But it's not happening, is it? It's just the want. I want to want. Everybody wants to want. You can't want for someone. You just got to let them have the win. Or have the loss. Maybe they'll get their head right. I'm assuming you're right, by the way. If you're wrong, you're wrong. But I'm assuming you're right. But let them have the win. So people are complicated, and I understand that. But the actions are what matter. Returning back to the purpose of the particular point in the conference, your actions matter, not your emotions. So even if you're dragging your feet all the way into heaven, you're still going to heaven. But if you're skipping and laughing on your way to hell, well, you're skipping and laughing on your way to hell. So your emotions are important, but not for this. Not for this. They don't go here. So you do the win, and you take the win, and you move forward in virtue. So it's the actions that matter. So how do you grow a virtue? More habits, more actions. Okay? That's why I'm saying when God sends you the saint makers, you can be grateful to them and for them because they're making you a saint. Well, Father, I don't feel like a saint. I didn't ask what you feel like. When did I say what you feel like? It's what's the right thing or the wrong thing. Everybody with me here? Because the rest of the time now we're going to go through virtues. We'll go back to these basic points, but the rest of the time is looking at virtues. Everybody got this? Okay, now we're going to roll forward. If integrity is to follow or to live according to a personal set of values, you might be helped by identifying some values. Maybe the struggle is that you've been trying to avoid things instead of trying to do them. So now let's look at doing things. Let's look at some virtues. Now, first 4 are the most classic of the virtues. If you ever look up virtues, any list, these will almost always be the first 4 because they were discovered pre-Christian. Aristotle had identified these. In Christianity and Catholicism, we call them the human virtues or the temporal virtues because any human being can develop them. Any human being can develop them. Do you know that weird friend that says to you, well, it's their culture and they can do that? Nope. Not if it's against one of these virtues. Any human being can figure this out. Everybody with me? So there are things that all human beings can figure out. Now, they may choose not to, but that's not a morally clean thing to do. Do you get what I'm trying to say? So if they do a bad thing, you can't stop them maybe you can't, fine, but they're not okay. They're not morally okay. Well, they don't know any better. Yes, they do. These are things that can be discovered by the light of reason. Just plain reason. And when I go through them, you're going to go, yeah, life would be a lot easier if just all of humanity lived these 4. Forget about the other ones we're going to go through, just these 4. Think about war would essentially not exist. Hunger would essentially not, like you would eradicate massive amounts of problems of humanity. So let's start with these 4. The first, of course, is prudence. Prudence is referred to sometimes as the chariot. I believe it was Aristotle called it the charioteer of the virtues, right? The one that all the other ones go on top of. To be prudent. What is prudence? I mean, a rough definition is the best judgment on how to carry out an action. The best judgment on how to carry out an action. In other words, you're taking into account the situation you're in. If you don't take account into the situation you're in, then you're not prudent. Those 2 things go together. So prudence helps us to decide, given where we are and how we are, what we're supposed to do. Right off the bat, that tells you that to be a good Catholic, you should be aware of the situation you're in. Because we're saying that that's one of the first ones. But just to be a decent human being, right? Because Aristotle wasn't Catholic. Aristotle was 300 years before Jesus. And he was like, yeah, prudence. Just to be a good person. Why? Because some of us get emotional and we get right in here and we're lost in our own heart and we just blast out from the furnace of the heat that we have inside. And we're not aware of the situation. You are not, by definition, you're not being prudent. You see how the prudence takes effect? This is also the virtue that most affects your daily life. This is, of all the virtues we're going to do, this is the one that most affects your daily life. And you see now why the philosophers and theologians say all the other ones stack on top of these in a certain respect. Because you can be certain things in certain situations. See? So, prudence. It's your best judgment on how to carry out an action. It affects your daily life. It's to think before we act. It's to limit our energy. If you do it right, it ends up limiting the energy you have to burn to do stuff. If you start living just with prudence, you'll find the rest of your life is easier because you'll use up less energy making decisions because you'll take into account the thing around you. How do you develop prudence? You're going to have to start developing what I sometimes tell people to look for, the virtue of vigilance, which is to keep your eye out, or just to not stack a virtue on that. How about we just say, learn how to pause. Now, what's amazing about the human mind is a pause for the human mind is it measured in microseconds. Our mind is so incredibly fast. That's why, have you ever been in a high adrenaline situation and things like everything's going slow motion? It's not. It's that your brain is going into hyperspeed. That's a common experience because it's a common thing. That's how fast your mind is. It's magnificent. There's a Doctor Who, a wonderful show. There's a scene in the 12th Doctor. He jumps out a window to what seems like commit suicide, which is not the kind of thing he would do. But he's doing it because he thinks he's being tortured. And there's nobody in the room. He goes, well, if you're being interrogated and tortured, you're the most important person in the room. So he just runs to the window and jumps out. Because he thinks this whole thing is a setup. He's like, this isn't real somehow. I'm out. So he jumps out the window. And the episode continues on. He appears in his ship, which he's not, but he appears in the ship. He's talking and he's thinking. He has a chalkboard as he's thinking out. He's alone in the episode. And he's thinking out what he's talking. And then maybe 3 minutes after him talking, maybe this, and if I notice the wind is falling at this speed, he's super intelligent. And so I felt air pressure, so we're about this high, because he has no idea where he is. He's woke up somewhere. He goes, this is it, and I think I smell the ocean, so there's probably water beneath me. And if I throw out a window, he throws a book out the window first to break the glass, but it's because he was backing away from a threat so that he could hear how long it took. It took 8 seconds to fall, which at the speed of a body falling, he does all this math, and then he goes back, and he's still falling. Because you can play with that reality of time. If you're at that level of adrenaline, obviously it's an exaggeration, and it's a fantastic scene in a famous episode of the show. But the idea here is, you're right. So just to pause for a second can give you just access to prudence. You may not make a prudential decision, but you certainly are acting with prudence already just by taking the second. Just to pause. Next one, justice. These are just the 4 human virtues, or the 4 temporal virtues, because you can figure those out. Justice, to make sure that each person has their due. That one's a really easy one to define. To make sure that each man has his due, what is due to him. Most of us, right off the bat, with that definition, it changes how we think of justice. We think of justice as what I am due. Nope. What everyone is due. I is part of that, but everyone. What everyone is due. Also, you see how very quickly it shifts a phrase that's used right now, which is slippery at best. Social justice. That's a slippery phrase. By definition, justice is individual. To each their due. Say social justice is to group people. Once you group people, you now have different people who do different things. Do you get what I'm trying to say? If we're going to pay everybody who had ancestors that were misabused money, how much do I get? I'm Puerto Rican. My father was dark-skinned, my mother was light-skinned. But where my father came from, dark-skinned were doing better off than the light-skinned. And neither of them got abused by any Americans because they lived in Puerto Rico. I don't know. My sister's light-skinned. Should she pay, what, like $1 extra tax? But she's descended from Puerto Ricans. Wait. Okay, what if you're Irish? Well, when did you come over? Did you come over in the Civil War, where you literally got off the boat and we put you on another boat to go fight in the Civil War? And you were slaves. You know, there used to be signs. My Irish priest friend of mine has a sign, no dogs or Irish allowed. My racism. Does he have to pay? Why? He never had a slave. Never even came close. Justice demands that you look at those things. So when you group people, be very aware that by definition, you're shifting the definition, you're messing with justice. I'm not saying social justice causes aren't important. Of course they are. But you have to take into aware that that word means something very specific. And if you're going to do that, then you have to really look at the person. And I know the numbers that I was just describing to you begin to get a little absurd very quickly, right? You go back 5 generations. What if you're like, some of these people that are descended from both, right? Jefferson, where Thomas Jefferson found out he had kids with one of his slaves. What if you're one of those kids? Does the half of you pay the other half of you? I'm just saying. What does that mean? It's a good idea in principle, but you see why you have to look at the individual. And if it sounds absurd, that your ears should prick up. Their prudence should trigger and go, wait a minute. Maybe this is an imprudent conversation. Or at least the way I'm approaching it. It's much more complex. Do you remember what I said earlier? If somebody says it all comes down to, you should just turn the volume off in your ear. It's much more complicated, these things, than what they look like in the moment. Justice is to give each person their due, including God, to give God his due. A just man gives God what he is due. It's to follow the rules and laws of daily life. So laws are laws, right, from the government, and rules are the restrictions we have from our job, from our family, from our station in life. If you're behaving in a way that it's not appropriate to your station in life, you're a married guy, you're acting like you're not a married guy. Well, I always act that way. You're always been wrong. Okay. You just admitted you've always been awful. Continue. Let's see what else we get out of you. No, justice is to behave according to the rules and laws of daily life, to make sure everyone is treated with the respect they deserve. That includes people in authority over you, even if you don't like that position of authority. Sir, ma'am, things like that. Officer, right? That means something. Their office, their position is due a certain level of respect. People in positions, in public policy positions, they're due a certain amount of respect. We know that, yes, they are. It's their office. They don't deserve it. Doesn't matter. They earned it. They have it. Until you can bring demonstrable proof that they cheated to get it, demonstrable, then you are being unjust. Now, does that mean you're a sucker and you're going to do like the Nuremberg trials where they're like, I was just following orders? No, of course not. Justice demands that you don't let people be killed. But how many times are you being asked to help people be killed? We're so dramatic nowadays. So dramatic. People are dying. What? Shut up. No, they're not. Well, no, they're not. Stop it. Not because of that. They're suffering or they're annoyed, but they're not dying. Or are they? Then we take it more seriously. But there's degrees. Justice demands that you look at it. So does prudence. Again, you're building. Make sure everyone is treated with the respect they deserve, and to protect the rights of everyone. We're looking at everyone's rights and protecting them, not demanding from them. You got me? You can never say take from someone to give to someone else to be just. You're making sure you defend what their rights, fine, but you're not taking. If you're taking from people, then you're already breaking justice. You're being an unjust person. Now you can say, and is there a lawful entity to take what belongs to them? Then that's what you have to appeal to. You get what I'm trying to say? We're not savages. We have society. Temperance. Temperance is self-control of the passions. Self-control of the passions. Understand this. This is a really easy one, but a lot of people fail on this one. I understand you have passions. that doesn't mean that allows you to act on them. That's it. That's the sentence. They're not that deep. But it's incredibly common for people. Well, I really wanted to. And? Who was that scene at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, I think, right? Where they're like, what if I see something somebody else has? They're good guys. There's all these anti-heroes, and they end up being the good guys. At the end, they're forgiven by the legal system of space or whatever, I don't know. And they're walking out, but they're all wise guys. And they're like, so no more crimes? And they're like, no more crimes. Well, what about murder? And the cop goes, that's like the worst thing you can do. No murder. You can't. What if I really don't like someone? No, you can't. What if somebody has something I want and they won't give it to me? And the cop kind of looks at you guys really are bad, awful people. Like, yeah, just because you want something doesn't mean you can just take it. Not just theft. I don't mean that. That would be under justice. I mean in terms of passion. How do you develop temperance? Maybe this will help with it. The best way to develop temperance, the fastest way, we're going to go through others, but the best one is simple. Get used to saying no to yourself. That's it. Stop trying to squeeze an extra penny out of life. Just stop. You will develop temperance very quickly because you will learn to say no to yourself. You notice I'm not saying no to yourself in criminal things. I'm assuming you're not. I'm saying even when people go, well, I mean, it's not a big deal, it's not against the rules. You lack temperance. In an awful way at that point. Well, I mean, it's there, it's free. That's lacking in temperance. You probably don't control your passions in other parts of your life. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you are never going to find shiny doorknobs in an old house. It's a weird version of a phrase. I made that up, by the way. It's not like a saying. But I like it, so I use it. You don't find shiny doorknobs in an old house. I say that when I see something and I learn something about someone, and I go, then I probably can extrapolate this or this. I might be wrong, but I'm probably not. Why? Because you don't find shiny doorknobs in an old house. If you go to an old house and everything is old and antiquated and unused, and you see a brand new shiny doorknob, that door has been used or replaced. Something is different because it doesn't belong there. Doorknobs get all worn out. You know what I'm trying to say, the brass doorknobs? So what? So the same. If you have no temperance in other things, right? One of the Gospels, coming up in, I don't know, well, because Lent cuts up things, so I don't know, after Lent. One of the Gospels is, right, Jesus says, if you are trustworthy in small things, you will be trustworthy in great things. If you're a man or a woman of integrity in small things, you will be a man or a woman of integrity in great things. But if every time you see a hole, if you see a pocket and you just move for it, you probably lack horribly in other elements of temperance in your life. It's almost impossible. If you're always squeezing out. Now the thing is this is particularly dangerous for us who live in a big country in big cities. Because you do have to fight for your own. Because a city is kind of a rough place and people will take from you. You've got to be very suspicious. We'll get into how do you deal with yourself, but you got to be, because a lot of us are used to that. Just squeeze out $1. Too bad, I got mine. Be careful. Because it may have destroyed any semblance of temperance you have. So that means you will find struggles in how you eat, in how you drink, in your sexual appetites, in your patience, in your sorrow, in your anger. Temperance, these are the fundamental ones. Like the other virtues we get after the next one, then they're a little more centralized, so they may not affect. But these are the big guys. So if you don't know how to develop temperance, say no to yourself once in a while, you're already going to be in trouble. Another one to do for temperance, how to grow it, take less than what you want or can. You want 3 scoops, you're allowed 3 scoops, take 2. Oh my goodness, you're like Mother Teresa already. Well, because I say it and people are like, wow. And I was like, yeah, oh my gosh. We're already making a church in your name, just so you know. It's already named, we won't say what it is, but we're working on your statute. We have the feet. No, you just take a little less than you can. It's okay. Less than you want. But I really want it. I didn't ask what you wanted. I know what you want. But if you start doing that, what will happen is you'll begin to develop temperance of saying, I can control my passions. Because that's what temperance is about. Not my passions control me. Everybody with me so far? Okay, the last one is, for temperance, get comfortable with discomfort. Good Lord, some of you are going to die with this one. What? I'm uncomfortable! Get comfortable with discomfort. In fact, shocker, don't die. Ready? Maybe look out for and look for discomfort. Oh my gosh, be cool. Don't die. Look for discomfort. Let discomfort happen without commenting on it. I don't know which reflection I gave you. Did I give you the one from... It might be the one you're going to get now. I had lots and then I deleted a bunch because I realized I had way too many reflections to give you. Let's see. So I don't remember which one I ended up giving. Well, I remember some of them, but yeah, no. Father Lorenzo Scupoli's book, I was going to give you a reflection, and one of the things he says to develop some of the virtues, just don't comment on whether you're hot or cold, whether the temperature is there. Just don't comment on it. And I remember thinking like, I like this guy. By the way, Father Scupoli, he was the one that was the spiritual combat. There was a copy here. By the way, Father Scupoli was accused falsely of breaking the rule of his habit, of his order, and he was imprisoned for a couple of years. He was let out, but he lived under that suspicion, and he was cleared of it like a year or two before he died. So he was accused right when he got ordained, and he wrote this magnificent book that became a spiritual classic and died. And he lived calmly and quietly under that kind of suspicion. And you were convicted. He was overturned, and they were found to be ridiculous and absurd. He was always innocent. But the guy knows a little bit about suffering quietly. You probably didn't even know that. If you read his whole book, you wouldn't know that. You have to look up other things about him, because he wrote the book after. He could have been like being falsely accused and being quiet, like some people that accuse people because they well, you don't believe me? Read Dante's Inferno. Who's in hell? Everybody Dante didn't like, okay? From his time. I mean, yes, it's a comedy, but the people in hell were the people he didn't like, okay? You definitely knew who done it. He was like, yeah. Or Michelangelo, go to the Sistine Chapel, and in the Souls in Hell, there's a snake biting a man's sweet spot, if you get what I'm trying to say. And the snake is just hanging on. It's covered. And it was a cardinal that had told him he shouldn't have naked people up there. He goes, cool, so you're not going to be naked. Well, he is. It's just, yep, right in the, yep. Bam, cash and prizes, all gone in a snake. And he painted his face. The guy was alive. He walked into the room. He was like, yeah, that's you. Haha, right there, you. So when I say Father Scupoli was humble and quiet, it's not like it's unheard of for people to do that. Dante, that's on the Sistine Chapel wall forever. Forever. Like forever. He's like, yeah, that's you. Like he did it. So to understand, like, this is not like a thing. Like, people do this all the time. He didn't, Father Scupoli. And just not comment on the weather, let alone being accused falsely. Just... The last of the 4 human virtues, fortitude, sometimes called courage. You kind of already know what it is then. Fortitude is courage and constancy in pursuit of the good. Courage and constancy, being constant. The best example I can think of is Sam, Lord of the Rings. Sam does not give up, even when Frodo wants to. Even when Frodo, he thinks, dies. He's like, nope. If you don't know the book, it's a story. It's a magnificent fantasy story. The author wrote the author wrote, and super Catholic author. But it's a complete fantasy based on, basic principles of reality in the Christian life. And the main character, arguably, has a ring he has to destroy. And his best friend stays with him all the way to the end, and then some. Because the book ends after Frodo's gone with Sam. That's how much Sam is a good friend. Sam stays as his friend, and he says, we got to keep going. It's like all those great stories that we used to hear as kids. I bet you those people had lots of times they wanted to quit, but they didn't. They kept going. I guess maybe one day somebody will write stories about us, maybe. That's perfect fortitude, definition of fortitude. By the way, that's not an accident. Tolkien may or may not have hinted that some of the characters are representative of virtues. So if you look at the characters, you'll begin to see, oh yeah, that guy, okay. All right, it's not so much that they're like an allegory for like C.S. Lewis, who was a friend of Tolkien, who was like, the lion is Jesus. Got it, okay. This one's more like, it's your soul and the journey of your soul, and each of the characters can be like a virtue or not, lacking or here to show you. Fortitude. To resolve, it's to resolve to resist temptations or obstacles. So how do we develop fortitude? Again, it's through actions. But 1, be aware of what are temptations or fears, repercussions for things, and then deliberately move toward them. I don't mean a fear for your soul or a moral or spiritual fear, right? If it's a fear of a temptation, then don't move toward it. That's just dumb. That's, you're flirting with temptation. I mean a fear of a temporal loss. This is where integrity really comes in. And deliberately move toward that. Now, at this point, before we continue, I hope you are starting to decide what you'd like to be. Remember those questions from the second conference? And the first conference, second conference. What would you like to be? Who are you? And what kind of person do you want to be? And things like that. Well, now I hope, just by listing 4, realize how many things would not be in the world that are negative, horrible things in the world if we just looked at those 4. We haven't even gotten to the supernatural virtues, the ones that are oriented toward God. These are just oriented toward any person can figure these out. Now, the next 3 are classically called the supernatural virtues. So if the other ones are the natural virtues, these are the above natural virtues. Or if the other ones are the temporal virtues, these are the supernatural virtues in the sense of they're beyond. Or theological virtues. Theos means God. Theologos is study of God. Theological virtues. These are from God and towards God. There are only 3. Faith, hope, and love. Or faith, hope, and charity. I like charity because we've taken love and abused and stretched and bent it so ridiculously that at this point, the word almost has no meaning. No, Father, yes we do. I love pizza is the same word as I love my wife. That's ridiculous. I'm not saying don't say you love pizza. I'm just saying be aware that then the word is not so useful, okay? That's the guy who compliments all the girls the same way. He literally copy-pastes the text, okay? So don't take it too much. Like, no, but he's like, no, stop it, girl. Stop it, girl. Get over yourself, girl. He got over you. I'm just being honest. That's a real friend. Okay, so faith is a supernatural, in other words, given by God, the seed of it, the smallest part of it, given by God for the intellect to understand and accept the truths of salvation. Faith is the supernatural light given by the intellect, or given to the intellect, to understand the truths of the faith. What? Simple. Faith is the supernatural light for the intellect to understand and accept the truths of salvation. Okay, let's unpack that one a little bit. That's a very specific definition right out of the catechism. Okay, but what does that mean? You have 2 powers to your soul. Parts to your soul that are things that your soul can do that your body can't. Your intellect and your will. You've already heard me speak about the will and the intellect. Those are not in your physical thing, right? So if I chop your arm off, you don't have less of an intellect or weaker of a will. Do you get what I mean? It's part of your soul, not of your body. So your intellect has your memory in it, has your imagination in it. You can break it down more, right? So just like I could say, I have organs in my body, and then you can break down the organs even more. Well, your soul, we don't say we break it down in the same sense, but yeah, you can break it down in that generic sense. Well, your intellect and your will. So faith is the virtue from God given to you to help you with your intellect. How to apply it to the truths of the faith. We'll get to how to grow it after we do all 3 of these. Hope. If faith is for the intellect, can you guess what hope is for? The will. So hope is a supernatural strength, right? Supernatural strength of will to trust in God as our final end. Hope is the supernatural strength of will to trust in God as our final end. Strength of will, supernatural strength of will to trust in God as our final end. Our final end. In other words, I trust that God will take care of me. Not just in each particular moment, but at the end of my life. And last, and not certainly least, in fact, she is called the queen of the virtues, charity. Charity. Supernatural, there it is again, infusion of love for God and our neighbor. You notice I'm not mentioning the will or the intellect because it appeals to both. Supernatural infusion, it's given to you, of love or affection of God and our neighbor. This is, by the way, everybody has seen movies, and some of you have met people where they're like super religious, but they're actually monsters to other people. It's like a trope at this point in movies, right? They're like really religious, but you find out they're like murderers, or they're like, I don't know, something like that. Why is it so odious to us? Because clearly they say they have love for God, but they don't have love for their neighbor. You're supposed to treat people right if you're a religious person. Just a basic truth. And so God and neighbor. You can't be like, I love God even if people are stupid. Then you don't love God. Dorothy Day used to say, think of the person you love the least in your life. The person that most bothers you. That's how much you love Jesus. And I was like, I regret learning this information, but now I know it, so now you have to know it. Because that way I don't have to carry the burden alone. Because she said, God, Jesus, if you love God, then you love your neighbor. Jesus says, right, I'm sorry, the gospel of St. John, or the letters of St. John say, it is a lie, the person who says he loves his neighbor, loves God, but hates his neighbor. How can you love the God you do not see when you do not love the neighbor you can see? You are lying. That's Bible, that's not me. Right? What Jesus says, whatsoever you do to the least of my brothers, Mother Teresa's famous words, that you do unto me. That's what guided her whole life. That you do unto me. So that's why she worked with the poor, because she was doing it for Jesus. That's why she worked with lepers. She was doing it for Jesus. AIDS patients. She was doing it for Jesus. So I go back to what Dorothy Day said. Think of the person you like least, and that's how much you love God. Because that's the least of the brothers, and you've done it to Jesus. That's why. Now, how do we grow faith, hope, and charity? All three are given to you first. So unlike the other ones, that's out of revelation. You have to figure that one out. There has to be, you can't figure that one out. That has to be given by God. But most of you are given faith on some level. You're here. But also, you have to use them. If you don't, they'll die. They wither, just like any other virtue. So how do I use them? Trust God. Learn how to trust God. Well, I don't know if I trust Him. Well, then that's why you need it. I'll let you figure that one out. Take a second. It is in trusting that we move forward. Now, faith, you have to act. Faith is the one that's most oriented toward action. Right? I always tell people, just think of St. Paul's letter in the song. We walk by faith. And not, if you're staying still, that's not faith. So if you're like, I know Lord is going to help me with this, but you don't go out and try, then you're not acting with faith. Right? Some people get that wrong. They're like, if I just pray, you hear people say that about religion. The problem with you guys is you just want to pray and you think that's going to fix problems. Not a person who's being genuine about their religion. And if you're going to judge situations by who's wrong, then racists are right. I'll let you think that one out. If you're going to judge a group of people by the people who don't follow the best of that people, then racists are right, because that's what they do. They judge a group of people based on the worst of those people. You see what I mean? Nobody wants to be with them. So if you're going to judge a religion by the people who don't follow the precepts of the religion, then all you're doing is judging the worst of that group. Don't judge a whole group by the worst, judge it by their best. Who do they say, this is the best in our group, right here? Judge their group by them, because those are the people who follow it most. If they're not following the rules of that group, then why are you judging them by them? That's ridiculous. You wouldn't do it with anything else. Somebody said to me, I don't like Americans because I met an American once and he almost shot me. And I'm going to go, I don't even have a gun. So what? There's 330 million of us. Shut up. There's 330 million of us. You know how randomly, completely different we are? We're basically 50 countries that decided to hang out together. Literally, United States, that's literally why basically we're like, all right, I guess I like you. Not that much, by the way. We're instinctively suspicious of other states. Jersey, why you got to go over there for? Good Lord. It doesn't matter. It's right next to us. Who cares? It's right there. People are like, I guess. If you're a real New Yorker, you're suspicious of other boroughs in the same city. I don't like going to the Brooklyn in the weekends. Why? Does it disappear into a fantasy land? If you're not there after dark, does the dwarves come and rob you? But if you're far from New York, I can tell if you're not from New York. Because you're like, I was in Brooklyn last week, and tomorrow I'm going to the Bronx. And you're not from here. You moved to America, New York? Yeah, I like it. Because full New Yorkers are ridiculously, absurdly, stupidly suspicious of the other boroughs in the city of the same city. If I was saying going to China, it's literally over a bridge. Oh my gosh, I have to cross a bridge? Yeah. Oh no, it's water. You're not even crossing an ocean. It's a river. It's not even an ocean. So you have to move. You have to act to return back to faith. You have to move and you have to act into hope. You have to. If you're not, then you're not acting with faith. Now, does that mean you have to trust? Absolutely. I told you, the other 4 you can figure out with your reason. I started with that. These are you have to. This is the very purpose of them, is to put yourselves in the hand of God. I don't see God. That's why it's called trust. Well, I'm worried. I know. That's why it's called trust. But you can. You've seen people do it. What's crazy is we have faith in ourselves, which is ridiculous. Have you seen yourself? Think about yourself. You know yourself better than anybody, almost anybody around. God knows you better, and maybe your mom. But you know yourself pretty well. You're a fool, or ridiculous, or so prideful as to be blind if you really think you're trustworthy to yourself all the time. You're lying. Or you're blind so far as to be useless. But we do. I only trust me. Okay. So you don't know you, because I know you, and I don't trust you. Like, what? I only trust me. Like, we trust other people. Look, it's not that faith doesn't exist. It's that we misplace it constantly. And with a big smile and say, this is better. That is the part that's shocking, frustrating. It's not that we don't have faith. You meet people who don't trust nobody. Okay. Not great, but at least you can understand. It's people who trust their own. I trust my own lights. Okay, that's terrible. So it's not that we can't. That's simply not true. It's that we choose to put it in the wrong direction. All 3 are given also, and this is where all virtues. I didn't start with the first 4, but now that we've gotten to the 3 theological, in prayer. One of the simplest and fastest and most steady ways to grow in a virtue is in prayer. Now here's the thing. What if you don't feel it? What if you get up there and you just kneel down somewhere right by your bed and you just say, okay, I'm going to say Our Father and 3 Hail Marys every night. And you feel nothing. Well, then you are growing even more. Why, Father? What did I say? When your emotions are not involved and your will is not going for it and you still do it, you're growing even more. You're just saying that to make me feel better. Nope. I've heard people say that to me. Religion is if you don't want to deal with the real life, or if you want to deal with reality, you can't deal with death, and I always look and go, you don't know anything about this religion, do you? If I was going to make up a religion, here, ready? Let's make up a religion right now. First thing we're not going to have is hell, because what? We're going to do this religion just to comfort ourselves? Why would I have a hell? What a stupid, stupid, stupid person I must be. And if I'm going to have a hell, fine. Why do we have to have a hell in my religion? Fine, we're going to have a hell. Okay, but people who are not in my religion can go there. Catholicism says the first ones who can go are the ones who know better. What an awful, it's invented by men. Really? Really? Who would invent that? The first people who can go, that there is a hell, is ridiculous. And that we can go to it is even more ridiculous that we would invent that. No, you're just doing that for control. Yeah, but the first guy who can go to hell is the Pope. So if he was doing control, why would he put it? He'd be like, I'm the Pope, so I can't go to hell. But y'all can if you don't listen to me. That would make tons of sense for control. But that's not what's at all, in any definition ever. Even the worst popes, those nasty freak ones from the Renaissance, didn't say that. They didn't. Sorry, your analysis does not hold up to even basic cursory examination. Why would we make it so hard? Why would we make it, if it was hell, all right, if I make it up a religion, right? Okay, if you have a beard, you're automatically a saint. If you drink whiskey, it's like you're moving up. Let me see what else. And sleeping forgives all your sins. Hey! Come on! Who's in? That's awesome. Solarianism. Starting it today. Come on! That's a religion. That's what I'm talking about right there. And cigars are obviously only for the holiest. You know? I mean, if you don't like them, well, I worry about you. That is your win right there. But no, we say, not only is cheating on your wife bad, if you think about cheating on your wife, it's the same thing. What a ridiculous religion if you're going to make it up. And that's not some pope said that. That's literally Jesus himself, the head of the religion, the star of the religion. If we made it up, the guy we made up. What he says is, I know you've heard that adultery is wrong. I say to you, he who looks at a woman with adultery in his heart has already committed it. What? This religion to make up. Stop it. Nobody would do that. Nobody would do that. No one does that. It doesn't hold up to the most cursory glance of reason. It's a simple razor blade, and I cut it in half without even trying. That took, what, 4 minutes? So you see how silly it is. No, it does involve trust. But it's not trust in human beings. If it was trust in human beings, we'd make it a whole lot easier. If you kill your brother, you're going to hell. Murder. You're like, all right, that kind of makes sense. Yeah. If you call your brother blockhead, that's raka, roughly translated, or stupid. You've already committed a mortal sin. You're like, what? That's ridiculous. Come on, he really is dumb. You know? And that's our Lord. That's not some pope. Don't give me that, oh, well, that's just the religion added that later. That's in the Bible from the words of Christ himself. If we're making it up, that's part of the made up part. Why would we make it so much harder? What an awful, awful religion to make up. Nobody does that. That doesn't work like that. You make up something where everybody feels good, there's no hell, and if you just do something easy, you can go to heaven. Boom. You don't make up a thing that you gotta... Oh, by the way, you got baptized and you believe in God? Yes, doesn't mean you're saved. What? You have to be good right up until the end. Right up until the end. Ezekiel maybe 37, he says something like, Son of man, I want you to tell people that if a man is a good man but he does evil at the end, he will go to hell. And you say, I am unfair. No, he is unfair for doing the evil. God says that to Ezekiel. I remember thinking, what did Ezekiel think right there? He was just like, bro. Like, you can't argue. You just go, oh thanks. Cool. Where are you not so I can go think quietly? So some of you just got that? I'm sorry. Moving on. I'm sorry, I was already moving on. So you have to trust these things. Hope has to do with your supernatural end. That means at the end of your life, do you trust that God, that's your final end? The reason we call human life sacred is we say it begins from God and it will end in God and God's decision. Now that includes hell, yeah. And charity. You can use love, but just understand that we've stretched that word so much, it's almost meaningless. Charity is to do for others. Love is an action, by the way. Love is not, when we say love, in any Catholic sense, we don't mean the emotion. Because the emotion comes and goes, like all emotions. When Father, I don't love this woman anymore, maybe we should separate. Wrong. Well, what are you doing for each other? What does that have to do with it? Actually, that is everything. The emotion comes and goes. You don't believe me? Go call your mom and ask her if she loved every moment she had to change your diapers. When you were 5 or 6 and you got sick because you were just dumb and she had to stay up with you as you were puking, did she love every moment of that? I don't know about you, but I know because my mother is very vocal about these things. And she's very vocal. She's very clear about it. So at least, hey, I'm grateful for it. I learned. She was very clear. Tú sabes, yo me tenía que quedar contigo, y tú te enfermo, y todos los años tú te enfermas. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm sick. I went to the doctor, and the doctor said it was a flu. I didn't do that. You don't love every moment. That's ridiculous. And if a mother doesn't love every moment with her kid, why would you think you'd love? By the way, here's the other one. Your spouse is not there to fulfill all of your needs. Sorry, this is not on topic, but I don't care. It's really important. Throwing a harpoon there. I was doing a pre-Cana prep and it was one of those things that people legitimately at the pre-Cana, there was a group of couples, like 30 couples, I don't know. And somebody was like, we don't? And it's one of the questions. Are you aware that your spouse doesn't? They're like, they don't? And I was like, yeah. They're not God. I don't work for your spouse. I don't work for your wife, bro. I work for God. So what? No, they fulfill the needs that are appropriate to a spouse. Your friends will fulfill other needs. Some people need to hear it the opposite. They should need more than me. What's that horrible meme? My wife better only have 3 friends. Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's terrible and I love it. I'm sorry. When I'm married, my wife better only have 3 friends. No, yeah, you can't fulfill all their needs either. You shouldn't want that burden, but you also cannot. You cannot fulfill all of the needs of someone. That's not how that works. You're asking for God there. You have the wrong number. You're dialing the wrong person. You're dialing the person next to you, not the person above you. Call that guy. Okay? And there are people who fulfill different needs, but they cannot fulfill all needs. It's literally impossible. And it's absurd when you think of it. It's just sometimes if you ask the question, you can trick someone into it. Yeah, no, they should, right? It's ridiculous. It's impossible. No one has been that way. No one. Our Blessed Mother herself, Mary, couldn't fulfill every need of St. Joseph, but she'd be the first one to say it. I can't. I don't want to. That's God's place. I'm not going to. She'd be the first one. Our Blessed Mother herself would have said, no, Joe. We got to keep praying. So, no, you can't do that. No human being can fulfill anyone's needs. We fulfill the appropriate ones. We fulfill maybe a couple freebies, but that's it. And then you have other needs you have to fulfill, needs for charity or needs for other things. You get to fulfill them there. Or you get to say no to some needs. What? Temperance. Oh, was that a callback? Yes, it was. Temperance. Say no to yourself sometimes. So if you work on one, the others will increase. Because in the end, all virtues are about how close you're coming to God. So the closer you come, it doesn't matter. Even if I want to move my right hand toward the radiator, are those radiators on? Or is the heat coming from the, okay. So if I move my right arm toward the radiator, that means my whole body's moving toward the radiator. Everybody got me? So if I move closer to God in this, why is that really great news? Because you can lean into the virtues that you already have. Bruh, super easy win right there. What are you instinctively, naturally good at in some of these virtues? And just lean into those. You're like, Now, I'm not listing all the virtues, so I may not list the virtue you're good at, but everyone is good at some. It's a grab bag. You get some great and you're awful at some and you're middling in a lot of them. But maybe you're like, Father, I'm not very religious and I'm not very good. You're like, okay. Do you do your duty and follow it through whenever you have to? Yes, good. Diligence. It's one of actually the nice ones. Lean into your diligence. Make sure you're ultra diligent. Good Lord. Diligent in everything you do. I'll get to it in a minute. And how you get things, do everything properly, list it, and be clear and follow through all the way to the end. That will actually grow you in your other virtues. So that's an incredibly good thing to know. The virtues are connected. Focus on the ones you have naturally. Also, you can focus on the ones that you struggle with. But you'll increase in all the other ones as well. Do you get what I'm trying to say so far? Okay.
The virtue of charity, does it reside in the intellect and the will?
Both the intellect and the will, but it's mostly the will. The will is where you love from, the will. The intellect, but it illumines the intellect to help with the will. That's why I didn't list either one for it. Continuing forward, I gave you the big 7 in most common 7 that are looked at. I say if you look at those, and because they're all connected, you will increase in all virtue. But we're going to get specific about 3 or 4 more. 1, chastity. Chastity is connected to the virtue of temperance. Why? Because the virtue of temperance is about controlling your desires and your passions. So chastity is under one of your desires or passions, so temperance would cover it. But chastity, it's control of the sexual appetite, specifically, right? The sexual desires. Okay. One of the things that with chastity to look at, a lot of times people fail in this one because they're worried about what they can't do. That's probably the first one people think of when they think of religion, and the first one they think of when they think of what they chastity stuff. Use like murder, stealing, and then chastity. One of those 3 are always the first one. Not that bad of a person. Who's the magic thing you always compare yourself to? I'm not Hitler. Okay. Wow. Congrats. Oh, well then. Oh, great. Can I change my name and name myself after you? Like, gosh, you're not Hitler. We're going to call you Saint Not Hitlers. We're going to build a church in your honor. But usually then they go, I don't cheat on my wife. I don't steal. I haven't killed nobody. Okay. And so you see, there's the negative first. But also, chastity is the one that people struggle with a lot. Here's the thing. Maybe you need to look at, instead of looking at what you cannot do, and there's lists out there, you can figure it out, what you're not supposed to do. I'm not going to get into that. What I'm going to say is, why don't you look at what you deserve? Too many of us fall and trade our souls for trash. Trash. Because not just garbage, it's trash. And then we look around and go, why am I covered in trash? And I go, because you asked for it. You wanted it. You looked for it. You rubbed yourself in it. So you're covered in trash. You smell bad. What do you want me to do? But I understand why, because lust, which is the opposite of chastity, hides under love. Right? All of the 7 deadly sins hide under other good things, because the devil can't create. He can only deform. He can't create anything new. So all the sins are a deforming of something good. So like greed is under the fear of trying to provide for the future. So he takes it and he twists it all the way up. So he goes, trying to provide for the future so much that I want everything, right? See? Lust is under love, and everybody wants to be loved. So you fall into lust. Everybody with me so far? Because it feels good to be loved. Then you just realize it's not really love. How do you know? Because there's no sacrifice. And love always has sacrifice. That's why pornography and masturbation are so dangerous. C.S. Lewis has a great quote. I'm paraphrasing because I couldn't remember it properly, and he's a master of the language anyway. But he said something along the lines of, the real problem with masturbation is that men find and fill their mind with a whole harem, right? A group of women for sex. A harem of illusion shadow women. And they come to please him whenever he wants. The problem is that first, the thing that is most oriented toward another, right? The sexual act, which is oriented toward another, and maybe even creating life. It's the most other-oriented thing we can naturally physically do. He aims it at himself because he thinks he's these women, but these women don't exist. They're in his mind. And second, they deform his ability to relate to real women because a real woman hurts your ego. A real woman requires you to do things you don't want to do. A real woman requires you to go places you don't want to go. A real woman and that bothers because all these other illusion women never say anything. And so they deform his ability to relate to real women. I remember reading that going, it's perfect. It's perfect. It's wow. It's beyond perfect. It's way more than I had ever thought of. I never thought of the whole, like looking. He goes, and what ends up happening is, because these women are just a part of his own imagination, what he's doing is worshiping himself. So he so turns into himself that he finds it harder and harder to relate to other women. And I was like, wow. By the way, science has now figured that out. It's completely true. But like everything else, I always like when Christianity's been hanging out on some corner for 800 years, flipping a coin, playing games, and science is like, I figured something. And Thomas Aquinas is like, oh, hello. Come over this way. Have a seat. I've lived here for 800 years. Good of you to join us. These are things that we've said 2,000 years ago. 5,000 if you're Jewish. You can go far enough. These things were held up as evil. You just don't want people to have fun. Okay. And yet then the scientist goes, actually, he's right. But it's true. And I mean, we have erectile dysfunction. Pornography caused erectile dysfunction. I had to learn that. I didn't know that that's a real thing. We have a rash of erectile dysfunction for men who are in their 20s and teens. Because pornography is so common that it has ruined them sexually. It's a diagnosable condition at this point. Look it up. That's insane. Keep saying you just don't want people to have fun. Cool, bro. Break your tubage and see how that goes. Break your tubes and then come see me. I'm be like, ha! What you got now? What you got now? Nothing. It's a real thing. Go look it up. They're incapable of the sexual act with a real woman. Think about that. Those of you who are older than 17, which is everybody, what you were like at 17. You were like a weird little motor driven by food and sex. That's like, you're just a little beast. I'm not saying you did anything, but you're at least a gentleman. To be incapable, stop it. At 17? At 17. As a priest, my worry about 17-year-olds is I'm basically trying to zip tie their hands and feet and just throw them in a corner and go, wait till you're older. Gosh, get away from me. Don't touch me. But to have a 17-year-old going, Father, the problem is I'm not interested. Okay, oh gosh. You can't sin. I can't tell you to sin, but seriously? Yeah, wake up. Like, seriously? That's a whole other problem. It's not a good thing. Forget about the rest of his life. What is he supposed to do? Who's going to marry him? He's broken at 17. How's he going to get someone to be interested enough in him to be married? Forget about who's going to marry him. Who's going to be interested enough in him to... How? He doesn't know how to speak to women. All the women in his harem think everything he says is funny. All the women in his mind think he's super fun and charming. He's never learned to be actual. It's a skill. We call it game. Saying he got no game. He got to develop it. But he can't. He won't have any. He can't develop it. So, yeah, poor guy. So, these things actually matter. What do you deserve? How about you look at what kind of love you deserve instead of what you think might fulfill you? Have some standards. Father, I'm going to lose people. That's okay. What? That's why we talked about integrity for the whole retreat? So yeah. But it's terrifying. I know. You'll be all right. No, but you'll be all right. Go look up CF fortitude upstairs. As you're writing down your notes, go back. Oh, fortitude. There, an arrow. Go fortitude. Got it. Okay. I better work on fortitude for a bit. Also, one other help with chastity is a very simple one. Garbage in, garbage out. I stole that from the computer world, but bad programming in, anyway. If you watch and you talk and you listen and you move and you do things that have to do with highly sexualized, hyper-sexualized world, why would you think that inside of you is not filled with all of that? Where do you think it's going? Where do you think it's going? You know what's crazy is we apply this to things that are not nearly as important. It's important, but not nearly as important. We say, if you want to lose weight, you got to just go to your house and throw out all that food. You just got to do that. And everybody will go, yeah, that makes sense. The food you're not supposed to eat, throw it out. If you want to stop drinking, you got to get rid of the friends that drink too much. You can't go to those places. But we go sex. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let's not go crazy. I say control your appetites about your anger. You can't just punch people you don't like. You might not like it, but you'll be like, I guess so. I guess so. But control your sex. You can't just have sex whatever you want. Whoa, whoa. Okay, if you're walking down the restaurant, I always wanted to do this. One day I'm going to have to do it. I'm going to get arrested. But you walk through the streets and you see somebody eating in a street cafe and just reach over and touch their food and take some. I'm so tempted, like when they have the little cutesy ones where it's like a low railing, so they're just like standing, and I'm like, you think you're too good for me? You're not better than the craziest? I'm right here. Like I really want to, like, I don't know. My whole French Revolution head goes off. Like I want to just like cut some heads. So I want to like test them. Were you eating that? Just like, you eating that? No? Okay, cool, thank you. Like, and if you did that, you'd get arrested, rightly so. Control your appetite. But in that appetite, you need to live. But sex, whoa, hold on, you guys. Do you see how insane that is? You don't need sex to live. Stop it. I'm here. Ridiculous. You don't need sex. You don't know. Well, Father, you don't know what it's like. Actually, you don't know what it's like. I told you, I'm a real Marine on the sands of Iwo Jima, and you are a kid playing Call of Duty in terms of chastity. What are you talking about? I don't know what it's like. What are you doing? Bro, I am your mentor, okay? You should come to me on your hands and knees and say, teach me, master. Father, you know what you're talking about. Woo, you insane? That's like saying for a professional football player, I could do that. Like, are you insane? That person's a professional athlete. They would end your life if they wanted to. I think no. But it's amazing how on our sexuality. Very fast. Chastity is the first of the virtues. Boat sinking, throw chastity out. Like, oh no, it was just that we had to, throw it off. Like, it's gone now. First one we throw off the side of the boat is chastity. That's why I listed it. Patience. That's another one we get rid of. Boat's going down. We push patience right off the edge of the boat. And we say we had to, right? Well, I was really tired, Father. I was really angry, Father. You have to understand, I hadn't eaten. And I was like, is there a wiring thing that I don't know about a stomach to, what? And I go, there is actually a wiring thing. We'll get to it. But you guys, did you know it? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Halt. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. If you're one of those four things, yeah, your patience will run out. Be aware of that. If you're one of those four, that doesn't mean you excuse yourself. I was hungry, or I was hungry and angry, Father, so it was okay. No. What I mean is hungry, angry, lonely, tired, so stop. Be cool. Don't be extra nice to the people around you. Patience, yes, sir.
Is patience under prudence or?
Patience would probably be connected much more to temperance than prudence, but yeah. Only because it's a control of a passion, right? Patience is a control of a passion, especially anger and sorrow. Patience is a control of a definition. Control of a passion, especially anger and sorrow. You notice most people don't think of sorrow and patience. They think of anger and patience. But sorrow will rob you of your love for life very quickly if you're not careful. You need patience in sorrow and sad moments too. How do you work on patience? We already hinted at it. Look at things as an opportunity, not a trial. Look at something as an opportunity, not a trial. Look at maybe someone as an opportunity, not a trial. They're an opportunity to show off your new patience mobile and be a patient person, okay? Your brand new shiny Patience 2020. It's a chance. And then again, this does go back to, which is why your question was good, about prudence. It does go back to saying a pause can be helpful with patience. A pause can be helpful. Just pause before you pull the lanyard and fire the cannon. You know that cannon in your heart that you just aim at someone's face? And just go, fire! You let them go. Pause for a second. Not because they're not wrong. I'm going to full on tell you, let's say they're wrong and they're being a jerk. Doesn't matter. That's when patience matters more. I know. Another way to do it is to look at from their perspective and see if how they could see. Yeah, and that's fair. But I'm saying, no, pull the lanyard and look at them and go, wait, no, they're wrong and I'm still okay with it. That's a movement forward. The next, just a few more. We're almost done. Kindness. Kindness as a virtue. It's a sympathetic disposition in dealing with others. Sympathetic disposition in dealing with others. You have to understand we're defining a very basic word like the word kindness. So you can't say it's being kind to others. Bad definition. Sympathetic disposition in dealing with others. What that means is to be careful of your speech and your forgiveness and your behavior in dealing with others. It's how you relate to others. It's not so much about what you're doing. That's why it's up higher. It's not lower on the base of the pyramid. It's up higher. But it's about how you deal with others. In speech, be careful because sometimes as we work on our integrity, our kindness goes down. Because we're so important about being a man of principle that I will poke you in the eyeball. Ha! Kindness, be a man of integrity, be a gentleman of integrity. Be a woman of integrity, be a lady of integrity. Yes?
Can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Why is it easier to exhibit these type of virtues in like a workplace or a ministry than it is with people who are very close to you?
Because you're not there long enough for it to wear you out. That's why. Because when you're around something for a limited amount of time, anybody can be anything for a certain amount of time. But over time it wears out. That's why I said at the conference yesterday, the second conference, I said, if you want to figure out how somebody's heart really is in terms of commitment or anything, you have to wait. The one scythe that cuts through everything is time. The one sickle that cuts through anything, trash from good, is time. It's the one we most don't want to do. That's why prudence is such an important virtue. You know, and temperance, just holding back. Because everything comes apart over time. That's why when you meet someone for the first time, you know, unfortunately our strongest impression is our first impression, but it's time that reveals someone's heart. You get to know them and you realize, oh, this person's only, that's why at work we're easier. The further we are with someone, the easier it is to live any of these virtues. Or St. Augustine kind of says we fake them, but yeah, because we can fake them. Be gentle. Look at how to work on kindness. Work on being gentle or thoughtful or helpful, particularly when you're angry. When you're feeling anger, well, I can work on kindness right now. And go out of your way to be gentle or to be thoughtful or to be helpful so that the virtue of kindness, the one we're covering now, is able to grow. Diligence. Diligence. Diligence comes from the Latin word for love. Diliges. Diligere, I love. When you do something with diligence, it is effort in completing a task fully. Diligence is the virtue of effort in completing a task fully. Sometimes people do not have some of the supernatural virtues, and they're not really interested in a lot of the virtues, but they're diligent. They give their word and they get it done. You meet people like that. They're not real for church, they're not real for this, they're not real for that, but you know what? They say something, they're a square dealer, they get it done. That person has diligence. And they don't cheat you, even if you're not checking. They're like, this is how you do it, and you do it all the way. Okay, good. Well, that means that person can work on that virtue and be diligent in what is due to God in justice and say, well, God is owed thanks because he's your creator. He gives you 174 hours a week. You can't give him back one? What do you mean? My week is mine. Okay. When you get sick, I'll ask you if your week is still yours. When your mom or your child is sick, I'll ask you, you still think your week is yours? Father, you won't do that. Oh, I'm a monster. I've walked up to people in delicate moments and whispered, hey, you remember that? I said, what? You're not crying right now. I didn't wait until you dried your face. Why are you doing this? Because I can teach you right now. This is not appropriate. Actually, it's really appropriate. I bet you're going to remember this forever. That's mean. Okay, that's fair. That one's fair. I'm a little bit mean. So, no, he gives you 174 hours a week. That's yours by his gift. You didn't start them. I told you this already. That's what the movie, one of the messages that Leonard Lowe wanted people to understand. But sometimes people think carpe diem, seize the day, is be crazy and do whatever you want. It also means appreciate every moment. Treat it well and thoughtfully. Diligence. Decide things. One of the ways to grow diligence is decide things in the morning. Take a few minutes extra, decide stuff, what you're going to do in the morning, and then make sure to get to do them all and do them completely. You will learn how to be a more diligent person because you'll be out of your way to go, okay, so I'm going to make sure that I'm doing everything. So what do I have to get done today? And you're going to go through the list. And if you didn't get it done, fine, but you'll have it on the list. You leave it on there for tomorrow. So then you add to it. That's a simple way, and a lot of people have used that over the centuries. Lots of people. Benjamin Franklin said he wouldn't start his day without making a list for the day. Like the people who get up so many things done that you're like, how did they do all these things? Look, and you'll see they always have a planner. Maybe not written out like a book, but they have a piece of paper or something in the morning, or maybe nowadays on your phone, and they go through what they want to get done in the day. That's a diligent person. The last one I'm going to do is the one that this title of the retreat was based on. Humility. The last virtue is humility. St. Augustine calls it a foundational virtue. St. Thomas Aquinas called it the irresistible virtue. If God sees humility in a soul, he can't resist. He has to come close to the soul and give it blessings. What is it? A knowledge of one's own true values. A knowledge of your own true value or strengths and weaknesses. Humility allows you to admit and to work on your faults. If you cannot see your faults, you are a prideful person. I don't care if you don't walk around telling people who you are, you're a prideful person. If you cannot say, I'm sorry, I was wrong, not, I'm sorry I made you feel that way. It's a different sorry, and it's not a sorry. I'm sorry I was wrong. You're a prideful person. If you can't say, if I can't do it or I can't figure it out, then I won't do it, you're a prideful person. If you only say, we do what I like to do and nothing else, you're a prideful person. And I feel bad for the people you're with. Pride, sometimes we think means you dress in fancy clothes and show up and tell people everything about yourself. That's one, absolutely. But there's all kinds of pride. Pride is the first sin. It's the devil's sin in the Bible, and it's the first sin of Adam and Eve. Pride. They wanted to be like God. So, humility is the first virtue that we're looking for in many ways. Humility is the opposite. Humility admits, right, your value or your strengths and weaknesses. And humility, by the way, some people suffer with humility not because they have pride, but because they have too low self-esteem. All of the virtues, I didn't say this before, but this is a good place to say it. All of the virtues tend to look at the golden road in the middle. All of the virtues tend to be in the middle of something else. So the opposite of being a coward is not being reckless, it's being brave. You got me? Aristotle said this 300 years before Jesus. A coward is afraid of things he shouldn't be afraid of. A reckless man is not afraid of things he should be. In other words, there are things you should be afraid of. You get what I'm trying to say? So the virtue comes in the middle of the two extremes. A chaste person is not a person who sleeps around and cheats and falls into pornography every day, but it's also not a person who will not even get near someone of the opposite sex because, oh, how dare they, evil, filthy women, if you're a guy. It's a middle road of treating every person with the dignity they deserve as best you can. You get what I'm trying to say? It's the middle road. Well, humility is that middle road. Some people struggle with it. Most of us struggle with it one way, which is the pride issue. Some of us struggle with it because we're not aware or willing to look at our strengths. We keep aiming too low. We're too harsh on ourselves. We're brutal on ourselves. And listen, I'm a fan of being brutal on yourself, but don't be stupid about it either. It's not going to help you if you're going to be too crazy about it. So, just so we're clear, humility is that middle road. The truth comes from the Greek word for dirt, humus. They figured, what's the most real thing? And well, dirt, the earth, everything is on top of it, so it's the most real thing. And so that's where that comes from. Yeah.
Question in regards to grace builds upon nature.
Yes.
In its connection to virtue.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Grace builds on nature is, first of all, one of the principles that he's talking about is one of the principles of the spiritual life. That means if you have an awful nature, God can't do anything with you. You got me? So, grace builds on nature. So that means that you have to give God something to build on. So for example, if you are sleeping with someone every day and you live in the same house, there's no way you're going to ask for the virtue of chastity. I'll give it to me. God will give it to me. How? You didn't give him something to build on. You're literally in the same bed right now. How is that possible? Grace builds on nature. Why? Because God respects the limits of the nature he created and also of the nature of our free will. So he'll add to it, but you have to give him the base. God will never overpower your will. He's always a gentleman. He knocks, but he never pushes. So when we talk about grace building on nature, this is why I said earlier the virtues are connected. So lean into the virtues that you kind of find in yourself naturally. Why? Because then God, you give him something, he'll keep building. And all grace is sharing in the life and the strength of God. So it strengthens all the virtues. That's why we lean into those. So where grace builds on nature, yes, and this is where you would want to look at, leaning into the virtues you naturally have. Everyone has them. Everyone has some virtues. You cannot exist without them. He wouldn't make you without them. You just have to figure out what they are. I've only listed, 10 or 11? I don't know. I've listed a few. I listed the first 7 because you have to. I mean, come on, you have to do the 7. And then I just threw in 4 or 5 more because I thought that they would be particularly useful. Also, now you have all the 7 heavenly virtues against the 7 deadly sins. So if you look up the 7 deadly sins, you look up the virtues I've listed. That's why I added these last few, because I want to make sure that we covered each of the 7 deadly sins as something to fight it. Does that help a little bit with a question? Yes. Okay. So how do you work on admit it, work on your faults, obey legitimate superiors? One of the simplest ways you can work on humility is obey your legitimate superiors. They tell you what to do, do it. And don't do it in a duplicitous way. Y'all gonna come out using that word all the time though, right? You're like, yeah, I don't know. I think he was being a bit duplicitous. You can twist your mustache as you say that. But it's true. Don't say it to them in a duplicitous way. Yes, you know what I'm saying. I mean, kind of yes, but Speak, let your yes mean yes and your no mean no. Distrust yourself. This is what I said I was going to get to. That works to work on your humility, don't trust yourself. Never decide against the previous decision, and you will almost never decide against your own well-being. That's just basic psychology. And I'm not going to prove that to you. You can look that up. There's study after study that human beings will show somebody something and make a decision, and then they'll come up with reasons after. The most famous study was the 70s. They bought a bunch of pantyhose, 4 pantyhose. They unwrapped them, they put them on a table in front of a store, and they just let people pick which one is the one they like most. And then after they picked, they said, why? And they let the person go. And then when they told them the reason, well, all 4 were the exact same pantyhose. We have the package. They're the same. You see people go, nope, almost no one would accept it. They're like, no, but this one, it was made better from the machine. Or this one, I feel like the color is better. Or, you see, it's justifying after the fact. Okay? So just be aware, we're programmed for that. And again, that's not a bad thing. That's why we evolved. Because those of us who were coming out of the caves that were like, should I don't know, they got eaten. Okay? The one who made a decision and ran either lived and had kids or died, doesn't matter, we're not their kids either. But the indecisive ones definitely died. Do you get what I mean? So we're the children of the decisive ones. But the problem is we don't like going back on a decision. So don't trust yourself. Check with basic principles outside of you. Look with moral principles. Check with someone that you can confidently, that will tell you the truth even if you don't like them for it. That's a real friend. That's the best kind of friend. This is why I picked the name of the retreat, or the subtitle, I am what I am in the eyes of God, no more, no less. That's humility. I am what I am in the eyes of God, no more, no less. I know it got lost a little bit in the translation, but that's the original title of the retreat. So what? So these helps to grow on your virtues, like daily and weekly examination of conscience. This is general stuff. So how'd you do this week? How'd you do today? Pick one for the day and work on that one for the day. Then maybe look at one for the week and see how you did. Pick different ones each day. Rotate, so that way you're not getting tired of yourself or tired of working on it. Pick one and I'm going to work on patience today. And this is just one list. Pick any of the virtues you think you might need. Maybe your lifestyle or your job or something requires different other virtues. That could be helpful. Most virtues are applicable to anything, and then work on them. I'm going to work on my modesty, which is a form of a subsection of chastity. Because I joke immodestly with people and I kind of like to excite and have fun little flirty jokes, but I'm married or I'm getting married and it's not appropriate. I'm going to work on that, modesty in my speech. And see how you did that week. Bit by bit, you will grow on them. Grow your virtues through your prayer. Ask for them and ask to be guided when the moments come of that virtue that you know which one to use. Also, prayer. Lastly, prayer. And don't forget, prayer. They really help you with your virtues. Look at the life of Christ. Look at how he used his virtues in certain ways. Discretion is a super underrated virtue. To not say what doesn't need to be said. Super underrated. Discretion. Jesus goes to the house of a leper. You're not even supposed to go there. And makes no reference to his leprosy. And that's the one where the guy goes to the house of a leper and the woman comes over and washes his feet with her tears, and then bathes him with ointment and then dries it with her hair. And Simon, the Pharisee, Simon the leper, says, hey, you should, what's going on? He didn't go, you a leper. Conversation over. He could have said that. And that would have been a completely correct argument, because you're not even allowed to have a house when you were a leper in ancient Israel. He has a house, plates, cups, knives, food. All those things were unclean. You're not even allowed to live indoors when you were a leper at the time. You can live in a cave. That he was at his house. The best argument ever. Just end that dude. Nothing left. Really, leper? And that's it. Drop mic. But he doesn't. He says, Simon, when I came, you didn't give me this. And he gives a whole discretion. What a massive amount of discretion our Lord has. People go, that woman's a sinner. Remember the woman they catch in adultery? He doesn't go, and you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and yet discretion. What our Lord doesn't say is sometimes as important as what he says. Focus on one each day, one at a time. Integrity is to live a set of values, creed, code, or conduct. So now I'm going to finish with these questions again. Who are you? Maybe who are you trying to be? Who would you like to be? And how close are those two things? And then I would say, what are your actions or words? Probably. When you line those three, you live perfectly with integrity. What are your values or goals? That's up there with who are you trying to be. How do you live it? That's a repeat of what do your actions show. Where I find duplicity in my life, I will change it. When there is hardship, I will look for it to change me. And tragedy is not something to run from, because I know I can't. It's something to see as part of the beauty of life. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, give us the light to know your will, and then the strength to get it done. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.